afternoon and welcome to Bariatric Friday. Today is December 20th, 2024. My name is Kemal Erkan. I'm here with Dr. Isaias Irgau. Dr. Irgau, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Kemal. Great to be back again on another session of Bariatric Friday.
So good to have you. So we are trying to have a compelling Bariatric Friday session with Dr. Irgau today on intermittent fasting and how it's utilized in the bariatric surgery journey. While we are doing that, we are going to talk about the intermittent fasting overall, not just for the bariatric patients, just better understand, and also some of the people who are utilizing intermittent fasting, popular people that we all know, public figures. So we are going to get some education from Dr. Irgau today. So then we can start with the question, what is intermittent fasting, Dr. Irgau?
Great question. So, well, intermittent fasting essentially is a way of abstaining from calorie intake, essentially from eating or drinking that has calorie for a certain period of the day in a planned fashion. So generally, in our daily life, we actually do fasting when we go to sleep. Right. So if you take our 24-hour cycle day, in the time in which we are asleep, we don't eat. At least most people don't. Right? If you're asleep, you're not eating because eating requires that voluntary activity. Right? We don't. So we are fasting for a certain period of time every time we go to sleep. So the idea really is to extend that fasting, even in the waking hours. Right? And there are different structures for that, depending on how many hours you want to do the fasting. So people talk about, for instance, the 16-8 fasting, which is one of the most popular. Essentially, what people are saying is that they will take that 24-hour cycle and they will be abstaining completely from any caloric intake for the 16 hours, right? Which means that if they are going to be, let's say, for argument's sake, asleep for 8 hours, they will be adding another 8 hours of fasting, right? And that leaves them only with a window of 8 hours for them to be able to eat. And what is the rationale for that? The rationale for that, Kemal, is that in our current society, we are eating all the time without any rhyme or rhythm, right? Every activity, whether it's work, whether it's leisure, is associated with some type of caloric intake. In other words, we're almost like the animals in the grass field, right? Where they are munching all the time, right? And we're doing the same. I mean, even going to the bank to do some activity nowadays, you are met with offers for food, right? Definitely in this holiday season, but even any other days, they will offer you candy, they will offer you hot dogs even sometimes, right? So you're going there to do your banking business and you may come out with some extra calorie intake, right? Everywhere we go. And then, of course, we try to get food to give ourselves some pleasure as well, particularly if we're stressed out. So it is very easy for us to reach for food all the time, which means that our waking hours could be a continuous intake of food with our digestive system working continuously to take care of that food that we are providing. This certainly is harmful. So what we're saying is, let's have a break. Let's consciously, voluntarily, in a planned fashion, say, between this hour and this hour, I am not going to take anything in. My digestive system is closed for business, right? And if we do that, no matter how many hours of the day we dedicate for that abstention come out, we are instituting intermittent fasting. So going back, essentially, we are practicing intermittent fasting, whether we understand when we know it or not, because we are actually asleep for a certain period of time of our day, right? But then we're saying, in the waking hours, we're going to add a number of hours in which we're not going to eat. And we're going to dedicate only a small window of that day to eating. That's essentially what intermittent fasting is.
So there are different forms of intermittent fasting. Some people do 5-2, some people do different for someone who actually, even like, remember when initial studies for intermittent fasting was based on aging, it wasn't the weight loss benefits. So for someone who wants to start this, what would be the best way for them to start?
So the best way to start would be to do it gradually, right? Gradually meaning you want to increase your tolerance level slowly as opposed to going gung ho, fasting really for several hours and struggle with hunger and really maybe be able to do it for a couple of days and then give up. We don't want to do that, right? So, for instance, if a person has never done this, what they could do is they could extend the hours in which they have their breakfast, for instance. If they were somebody who woke up, let's say, at 6 o'clock and then they had breakfast at 7, maybe they could decide to push that breakfast time to, let's say, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. That is extending their nocturnal fast to some hours during the day as well. So for instance, if they are asleep for 8 hours and now they're going to add another 4 hours in which they're not eating, automatically now they've done a 12-hour fast and they will have a 12-hour window, right? They can start that way. But then after a week or so, they can extend that fasting that they have started by not eating breakfast, maybe by pushing their lunch a little bit further. So instead of eating at 12, their lunch, they could be eating it at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock or even further. That will extend their fasting even further. So this is one way of doing it, one way of really getting accustomed to the idea, that when you're looking at food, you don't have to necessarily reach for it, right? You can wait. You can say to yourself, I'm not open to business yet. My opening hours start at such hour. You are planning it. You're telling yourself voluntarily that is the hour in which you will start consuming any type of calories. So that's one way of doing it. And then you mentioned the 5-2 regimen, Kemal, which is very different. The 5-2 actually looks at the whole week as such, right? And it says there are 7 days in a week. We are going to take very, very few calories over 2 of the days of the week. And then the other 5 days, we're going to eat normally. So that's another way of doing it. Whichever way one does it, really, the benefits are going to be there by having yourself really give your digestive system, your whole body, a break from taking food continuously. And that's the whole idea.
So this not being open for business, like I see it with some of the athletes who work so hard for their entire, well, not entire life, but you see a 35-year-old tennis player. If they're professionally done that until that time, they look much older than they are. So part of it is because they are overusing their body. So, and our body is not designed to do that, right? So we are not to be at the gym for 8 hours a day or, run for 3 hours every day. Even like the lions don't do that. So they only run when they need to hunt. So I think the idea of overusing our body, this also comes with the same logic here, where every time we eat something, the body has to do what it does for, even if you have a bigger meal. And this is part of the aging, because now you have to put more miles on this versus you could actually just maybe use it a little bit less or better plan. So that's what we are talking about here, right?
Absolutely. So there is another aspect to that as well, particularly when it comes to aging. And the idea is that if our cells, our body, which is made up of cells, is engaged in a continuous consumption and processing of energy, which is what happens when we're eating continuously, it doesn't really have much time to take care of other important things like rest, restoration, and clean up waste as well. Mm-hmm. If you take our cells, which has this enormously complex structures that make up our body, and we have billions of them, obviously, that specialize in different things. Each cell is actually independent in many ways. They have processes. They're almost like a city. They have energy processing plants. They have waste processing plants, and those things really don't have time to work if that cell is continuously engaged in absorbing energy and processing energy, right? So, and the idea is that sometimes if there is no waste processing properly by that cell, that waste will accumulate within the cell. And that may be the reason why we age fast, or perhaps even the reason why cancer can occur also. Right? So by letting our body rest from having to deal with the outside through energy processing, we are letting ourselves also do these important jobs, which are taking care of cleaning up whatever waste there is inside them. So if we're eating continuously, our cells will not have the ability to do that because they are continuously engaged in messages that come to them saying, hey, take care of this energy, extra energy that is coming up in the bloodstream. And that will generate an ongoing process, which by itself is very taxing to the body. If you think about it, one of the most energy-consuming activities in our body is actually the digestion of food, Kemal. And it's no surprise because it involves so many parts of our organism where many messengers are actively engaged, switched on and switched off continuously. And this happens every time we put something in our mouth because that gives the signal that the whole system needs to be turned on and that the machinery needs to work. So what we're saying is, let's not do that. Let's not do that. Let's give our body a break. Let's drink water, plenty of it, because the water does not initiate those mechanisms. But as far as calorie, as far as macronutrients are concerned, let's give them a specific time for which we will deal with them. So, for instance, if you are saying to yourself, I'm going to do the 16-8 command, it means that, after you wake up, you calculate how many hours you have been asleep, you add to that however many hours you need to make up a 16-hour period, and then you have your eating window. And then once your eating window is closed, then you're again closed for business as well, and the cycle restarts as well. So we're saying, let's give structure to this activity of eating. It should not be mindless, right? And Kemal, it doesn't mean we have to do it all the time and in every circumstance. Far from it. We're saying, let's make this a practice that we do most of our days, right? So, for instance, if we are on vacation or if it's a holiday, we don't need to do that because eating food with friends and family during the holiday, during the vacation is actually part of what a holiday is for us also to relax and enjoy ourselves, right? But in our daily living, which are the days in which we are mostly, working or studying or other things, let's have this structure whereby we say to ourselves, this is the time in which I start eating, and this is the time in which I stop eating, and stick to that.
So I'm sharing the picture of Pete Sampras, one of the tennis champions. He's, if you were to guess his age, he's 53 years old.
He's how old?
53.
53. Wow. Yeah.
So it's overused. He was a great champion, but I think when understanding of the balance, what you can and you cannot do with your body, it's just like, the example just for an easier understanding is the car. So same model, same year, you can put 30,000 miles on it, or you can put 10,000 miles on it. But if you need it, fine, maybe you need another car to kind of balance the age, but this is the same logic. So if you actually don't take care of or overdo certain things, we are not designed for that. So just like we are not designed to be having morbid obesity and obesity itself, so that's why our fight is for here. So the other extreme is the same problems. It can bring the same problems. Now, before we go into the utilization of intermittent fasting in bariatric, I want to bring up another issue. We have so many famous people who are actually doing intermittent fasting. So, Jack Dorsey is one of them. He doesn't have morbid obesity, and he's doing this. Actually, he does a lot of other stuff too. Like don't follow everything that he does. But this is commonly used. In fact, Jennifer Aniston, she had a book about intermittent fasting.
Okay.
So it's actually utilized by so many people out there. Her book is Intermittent Fasting for Women Over 50. Now, think about our patients on the bariatric side, almost 85% female. So this actually makes sense why someone like Jennifer Aniston would actually focus on women over 50 with females. So since it's being used by so many people, there are probably also a lot of mistakes that people are repeating. Like, for example, when we say no eating, we are not talking about just dinner itself, right? So if I have like a banana at 10 p.m., but I had my dinner at 8 p.m., so that 10 p.m. is interrupting what we are talking about.
Totally.
So that's one of the issues, including myself. We are making those types of, well, it's a small thing, so it's not a big. No, it's just actually, it does actually make the same, start the same process. So that's one thing that people don't understand. And they think that they are doing something, but they are really not. So that's something that needs to be emphasized, especially when they see these people are doing it, writing books, making money, and they didn't pay us anything for today's session. But the thing is, we don't want people to understand this in a wrong. The misperception of this is you cannot really. When we say no food, it means no food.
Totally.
So I think that needs to be highlighted a little bit more.
Absolutely. One very important underlying factor for supporting intermittent fasting, Kemal, is that it helps keep insulin level low in our body. Now, insulin is an extremely important hormone in our metabolism. Insulin rises every time there is calorie intake, right? And it rises because it has to take care of the calorie and send it to the appropriate organisms, right? And one of the reasons we struggle with obesity is because we have something called insulin resistance. That, in fact, is part of the reason there are so many health complications associated with obesity, right? And insulin resistance occurs when there is continuous stimulation for the production of insulin. So you have higher and higher levels of insulin that are unable to take care of the things that insulin can, because there is this overstimulation that occurs with eating. So the idea is you want to keep that insulin level down. And the way to keep it down is by not eating. Now, you mentioned the banana after dinner, right? You finish dinner at 8 and you're starting your fasting at 8, but then at 10 o'clock you're eating the banana. Well, the banana, guess what? It's going to raise the insulin up. So the whole business of really keeping that insulin has been sabotaged, right? So you are absolutely right. When we say no calorie intake, we mean no calorie intake at all within that window. Now, water is important. Water not only is allowed, but it's extremely important because we don't want people to become dehydrated, right? And there is a certain amount of water we have to drink every day. And if we don't do that, obviously there are consequences. And particularly, very often, a lot of people, by eating continuously during the day, get a lot of their hydration from the food, because the food that we eat very often will have a lot of water, right? So drinking is very important when you are fasting. Another mistake people make, Kemal, is that they overeat at the time in which their window occurs. I think there is no reason. It's not like you're going on some long period of food absence. You're not going to some desert where there is not going to be any food. You're still living around a lot of food. What we're saying is don't eat for certain hours. So when your eating window occurs, just consume enough food for you to be satisfied. You don't have to overdo it, right? Because if you overdo it, then ultimately you're going to end up taking on same amount of calorie that you were taking on when you were eating continuously. So that also defeats the purpose, essentially.
So that's because I think sometimes we just need to hear that again and again, including again myself. So like I used to, when we started, like it's just an orange, so it's not going to make that much difference. It's fruit, it's supposed to be healthy, but then no, it's like fasting uh, duration is extremely important.
Mhm.
Now, when you do it right, it works.
Yes.
Now, it has a lot of other benefits too. Like, when I travel every 3 months, I have to be in Turkey for our other office. But this time, well, I'm not able to do the intermittent fasting as I'm able to do it here. But the discipline, once you have that discipline, it actually becomes almost natural.
Mm.
So you have to kind of remind yourself or force yourself to do certain things, eat at certain times, versus if you have this good discipline in place, it automatically happens. So you don't really need to put too much effort in it. Now, it actually helps you throughout the day when you need to use the bathroom, when you need to do this, that. So like everything is kind of like scheduled almost in a way that you don't have some of those problem and crises that people are going through if you are on a good set schedule. So there are a lot of good benefits from the practical standpoint that I see. And people probably would enjoy those when you are more in control of what happens with you during the day. And then you benefit from it from the aging standpoint, from the weight loss standpoint, maintaining weight standpoint. So this is a good thing. Now, we want to shift our focus to the bariatric surgery process, and as we utilize this in our program. So how does this fit into the process of bariatric surgery? What patients should be doing? What we are expecting pre-surgical preparation, and what are the benefits that they would have before surgery?
Yeah, generally, I actually use intermittent fasting post-bariatric surgery mainly. And the times in which I employ that is when there are patients who struggle, for instance, with being stuck at a certain point with their weight loss. We call it plateau of weight loss. Or patients who have done very well, but then they start struggling again with weight gain. Invariably, those situations come out when patients encounter challenges in their life, emotional, personal, at work, where they start really reaching for food to make them feel good, to make themselves feel better or go away momentarily from the stress they are encountering, right? So food becomes almost like a way to comfort themselves, right? And that leads to a situation where they will be eating frequently. Remember, our patients, the ones who've had a gastric sleeve, a gastric bypass, for instance, by definition, they will have a very small stomach. So when they eat, the amount of food that can enter into their stomach is limited. So even when they are struggling, they are upset emotionally, they cannot consume a large meal. They can't. But what they can do is they can graze continuously. So they can reach for food continuously, right? So that is the behavior, that is the attitude that actually is going to hurt them in terms of weight regain. So a great way to counter that would be to introduce intermittent fasting, where you say to yourself, you know what? Between this hour and this hour, I'm not going to eat. Now, if they are successful in doing that and they have a fairly narrow window for eating, they cannot overeat during that narrow window because their stomach is small. So actually, intermittent fasting is well suited for patients who have a small stomach after bariatric surgery if they are struggling again. Because their struggle very often is not because they're eating a lot in one setting, it's because they start grazing. In other words, introducing calories continuously. So if I can convince my patients that intermittent fasting is a way for them to really escape that vicious cycle of continuously eating, actually, they will have achieved something good. And there is no danger for them to overeat during their eating window because their stomach is very small. Now, as I said, this, like any of our Bariatric Friday sessions come out, these are general ideas that we are discussing. We're not giving a specific prescription to any one person about what they should be doing.
Sure.
That setting is best exercised in a one-to-one consultation with a physician like myself or other physicians or other providers, essentially, which means that even intermittent fasting or the type of intermittent fasting has to be tailored to the individual in the appropriate setting. So, if patients have diabetes, if they have other medical problems, if they are taking other medications, we have to take all that in consideration before we can counsel them as to what may be their best and appropriate set of intermittent fasting.
But while we are on that, if we can actually also emphasize the nutrition deficiencies.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So not only, obviously, we're going to talk about, how frequently they are going to eat, but also we have to talk by necessity about the type of food that they have to consume, what kind of nutrients are important. And then obviously, like we say in many of our sessions, particularly bariatric patients have to be taking micronutrients as well, which are the vitamins and other minerals that are essential, which means that we have to delve into what type of food they are consuming habitually and also what kind of vitamins they are taking. And of course, that goes along with the fact that we do blood work periodically as well to make sure we are able to identify deficiencies early and then correct them in a timely fashion.
Sure. So, in terms of overeating, one of the things that I know what happens is you can't really actually overeat anymore. So when your stomach actually is used to that flow, I know, I can only speak from my own. Well, you see me on Friday nights, so that's the most probably I eat. So it's I guess your body kind of adjusts itself. Even the stomach probably gets smaller too, because I don't remember last time when I ate a lot. So,
but that's the key, though. It's once you get used to, right? But there is a road to get used to. So
right.
If you're starting intermittent fasting, it is very tempting for the person to overeat in their eating window when they are starting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once they do it properly and they're not overeating, as you have correctly said, there is some kind of adjustment even in the amount of stretching you can do to your stomach. So instinctively, you tend to stop early, essentially. Like all habits, we're creatures of habit, Kemal, and it's a question of really setting that habit. And once it is set, it's actually much easier than to follow through. So you are absolutely correct. Once you've been doing intermittent fasting for any length of time, then it is less likely that you will fall into those dangers.
It's almost like your credit rating. It just doesn't change right away. You have to do a lot of things before you see the progress, right? Yeah. The process. Like you are doing a lot of things, but that just goes a little bit slow. But once it happens, you are there.
You are there.
So,
absolutely.
Just like anything else.
Yeah.
This is something that we utilize again with our patients when it's necessary. We are on it. Now, one of the things that I was going to say that people should perhaps do, I remember when we started doing it, you did start before I did, and you kind of convinced me to do it. And then the idea was we were just checking throughout the day how we were doing. So having someone with you probably will help you, at least, being kind of accountable or responsible, so then not lying to a person that you respect. So it puts a little bit good pressure there. So I think that was important for me in the beginning. There's still time to time, I may not be fully honest, but 85% of the time I am. So this is a no-brainer. So this is a good thing for patients who are fighting morbid obesity, people who are not dealing with morbid obesity, but just want to have a good wellness in their life. and understanding what our body needs and what we have to do to make certain things happen and prevent certain things to happen. So this is a good thing. We have done several sessions regarding intermittent fasting. So please, go into the specific playlist if you want to watch more about this. There are a lot more information, maybe some more technical in some of the sessions. So you'll find a lot of good, beneficial information. Well, today again is the last episode before Christmas. So next Wednesday, I believe, is Christmas. So we wish everyone Merry Christmas. Now, if you are Orthodox, Christmas is on January 7th this year. That doesn't change, right? That's always January 7th.
There are some years in which it's a little bit different, but generally it's January 7th.
So if you are not an Orthodox Christian, then you are not celebrating next week. So you'll be doing that on January 7th. So Merry Christmas, everyone. We'll be back next week. And until then, please stay safe.
Thank you.